Hey everybody, today I'm going to do a comparison video of half-inch stubby impact wrenches, and specifically 4 of the top models that are on the market today. That includes the Chicago Pneumatic CP7732, the Mighty 7 NC-4611Q, the Aircat 1055-TH, as well as the Astro Pneumatic 1822. Now some of these have advantages over the other models and some have disadvantages. What we're going to do in this video is really put them side by side so you can see the differences for yourself. And if you're looking at a stubby impact and you're just looking at the pictures or even specs listed, it can be very confusing. So what I want to do in this video is show you side by side the actual differences, and we're going to be doing torque testing with them, specifically reverse working torque. I'll be using a Skidmore Wilhelm Model R, and I already have installed a reverse threaded nut and bolt. So all of these will be in full reverse, and we'll be able to see what the real power levels actually are. Taking a closer look at all 4 impacts side by side, we can take a look at the different measurements. Now the clear winner overall as far as the shortest head is going to be the Astro, coming in at just 4 inches long, followed up by the Chicago Pneumatic at 4 1/4 inches. Then the Aircat at 4 3/8, and finally the Mighty 7 is going to be the longest at 4 5/8. Now I do want to point out, as far as an overall measurement of the head, I did include the directional change switch on the back of the Astro as well as the Mighty 7 because that does make it longer. As far as the Aircat and Chicago Pneumatic goes, they do have their directional change switch directly behind the trigger, and it does not add to the overall length. Now as far as an overall height goes, the clear winner is going to be the Aircat, coming in at just 8 inches long, including the fitting. The Chicago Pneumatics coming in at 8 1/4 inches. The Mighty 7 is third place, coming in at 8 1/2, and then the longest out of the 4 is actually going to be the Astro, coming in at 8 3/4 inches. The directional change switch on the Mighty 7 as well as the Astro is located on the rear right above the grip. Now there are 3 forward as well as 3 reverse settings. You'll take this little lever, push it either direction, and that's going to change the direction as well as the power levels. The Aircat and Chicago Pneumatic both have the directional change switch located directly behind the trigger. Now they're both currently in the forward position. To switch it to reverse, you'll just take that tab, rotate it down, it's going to click into place. Now to change the power levels, right now we're on 1, which is going to be the low power mode. We'll take this little dial and then just roll it. Number 2 is going to be medium power, and then number 3 is going to be full power. As far as the different grips go, you can see that 3 of them do have an overmold grip, and then 1 has a plain metal grip. That being the Chicago Pneumatic, but in certain situations I think it's going to have 2 main advantages. Number 1, the grip on this is much more narrow, so if you have small or medium-sized hands, it's going to be a lot easier for you to hold on to it. And then more importantly, because it doesn't have a plastic or rubber overmold, if you spill shop chemicals on it, let's say brake cleaner, transmission fluid, or even antifreeze, it's not going to damage anything and you would only have to wipe it off. With the other ones, with those same shop chemicals, especially if it sets on them, could end up deforming them and then ruining your grips. Now as far as a comfort grip being the softest rubber, that would be the Mighty 7 or Astro. And then the Aircat has a very hard plastic grip. Now out of the 4 of them, I think that this one is going to be the most comfortable. And even though it is a very hard plastic, it's form-fitted and fits my hand perfectly. Now to test my ability to feather the trigger on each of these, I've hooked up 90 psi of working pressure, and we're just going to see how it does. Now I could show you how the triggers move in and out without air applied, but that's not really going to prove anything. This should show you firsthand at how easy it is to control the power levels simply by how hard you're pressing it on the trigger. Now rather than rotate that dial 1 through 3 to adjust the power levels to a specific setting, what we'll be able to do is apply either full power or a portion of that power simply by how hard we press it on the trigger. Now this is extremely important. Let's say you're running some bolts down or even some lug nuts. You don't want to snug them up too tight and damage the threads. You can run them down by feathering the trigger and then make sure your torque is correct by using a torque wrench. So starting out with the Aircat, it is in full forward and it's in power mode 3. And we'll see how easy it is to feather the trigger. Very easy to control, and I think the only complaint people would have with this trigger is the fact that at the very beginning there's about 1/8 of an inch of movement before it's actually going to hit the piston and then apply air power to the impact. Moving on to the Chicago Pneumatic, what we'll do is do the exact same thing. It's in full forward power mode 3, and I'll see how I can control this one. It feels very similar to the Aircat, and like I said, the difference between the two of these, even though the trigger style is the same, is the fact that there is no movement here at the beginning of the Chicago pneumatic, where the Aircat does have that about 1/8 of an inch movement before it engages. Moving on to the Mighty 7, this is going to be the quietest out of all four. And when I reviewed the Mighty 7 impacts, there were 3 different versions of half-inch models. The 4611, which is this model, is the one that I like the most. It's in full forward, and let's see how I can control its speed. Very easy to do. Now, I do want to point out the trigger on this is completely different than the Chicago pneumatic or the Aircat, but it does have roughly about the same stroke length. When we look at the Astro pneumatic, it's the one that's going to be the hardest to control because although the trigger is almost the same as the Mighty 7, the stroke length is going to be the shortest. So it has the least amount of travel to go to full power, and that means that it's also going to be the hardest to control. So I do have it in full forward, and we'll try and control its speed. So side by side, now you can see how I feathered the trigger. They all had 90 psi working pressure. They were all in full forward with max power. Now like I said, as far as the stroke length goes, the Astro is going to have the least amount of stroke length. I think that's going to be the hardest to control, especially if you want that mid-range. Now as far as the Chicago pneumatic and Aircat goes, they do have a similar trigger, with the main difference being that little bit of play at the beginning of the Aircat. But it also had excellent trigger control. As far as the Mighty 7 goes, if you're looking at any one of the Mighty 7 impacts, the 4611, although it does not have that same trigger design as the Aircat or the Chicago pneumatic, does have roughly about the same stroke length, and it's extremely easy to control. Now for a torque test with all 4 impacts, I'll be using a Skidmore Wilhelm Model R with a 1 1/4 inch bolt and a 2-inch nut. With this combination, I can accurately measure bolt tension in pounds up to 110,000. You'll take whatever the reading is, divide it by 70, and that's going to give you a torque rating. So what we'll do are 3 different runs on each impact, alternating impacts between each run. Each one is going to have a 15-second run time at 90 psi of working pressure. Now I also want to point out, in between each run, I will be cleaning off the lubricant on the back of the nut, on the washer face, as well as the threads, and replacing that with a fresh coating of R-0050 test bolt lube from Skidmore Wilhelm. This is specifically designed to work with this unit, and that's how we're going to get accurate results. Also, I want to point out, I'll be using a brand new socket for this test. I'll be using a Sunex Model 264, which is a 2-inch, half-inch drive impact socket. So I want to thank Sunex for sending this over, and it's going to give us very accurate results. Okay, we got through all the torque testing and the results were very consistent with each impact. The Chicago pneumatic ranged from 42,000 to 44,000 pounds of bolt tension, with an average of 43,167. Divide that by a factor of 70 because of the nut and bolt combination we're using, and it gives us a working torque rating of 617 foot-pounds. The Mighty 7 was 34,000 to 35,000 pounds of bolt tension, with an average of 34,500. Divide that by a factor of 70, it gives us a working torque rating of 493 foot-pounds. The Astro pneumatic ranged from 33,000 to 34,500 pounds of bolt tension, with an average of 33,500. Divide that by a factor of 70, it gives us a working torque rating on it of 479 foot-pounds. And finally, the Aircat ranged from 42,500 to 44,000 pounds of bolt tension, with an average of 43,167. Divide that by a factor of 70, it gives us a working torque rating on it of 617 foot-pounds. Now the interesting thing here, the Aircat as well as the Chicago pneumatic actually came out exactly the same down to the foot-pound. So through the 3 runs, even though they were different, when we averaged those out, the working torque rating between the two did end up being exactly the same. So they both came in first place as far as power goes. Followed by the Mighty 7, which came in with 493 foot-pounds, and then finally the Astro at 479. Now, keep in mind that that's only 14 foot-pounds apart, and they're almost exactly the same also. So the Mighty 7 would be in second place, and the Astro pneumatic in this case would be in third. So now you've seen a comparison of 4 of the top models of half-inch stubby pneumatic impact wrenches for yourself. Now they all have advantages and disadvantages, but hopefully this video will help you see those side by side and you can pick the right one for you. Now if you're looking for the most power, by far you'd pick the Aircat or Chicago pneumatic, and when we did our torque testing it came in at an exact tie. Followed up by the Mighty 7 and then the Astro, but even between those, although there was a slight difference, I don't think in real life you could tell. Because they came in within 3% of each other, at almost 500 foot-pounds apiece, they're going to be able to get the job done for you, and I don't think the extra 14 foot-pounds is really going to make that big of a difference. Now I do want to point out, as far as the size goes, the Astro pneumatic definitely is the winner. It has the smallest head, it would be able to get into the tightest places, where the other 3 just would not fit. If you want the most lightweight, you definitely go with the Chicago pneumatic, or the quietest would be the Mighty 7. And then if you want that real nice comfort grip, the Aircat is going to be the winner. Now overall, I think that they're all good impacts. It's just a matter of picking the right one for you. Now I do also want to point out, as far as warranties go, the best warranty is going to be the Mighty 7. That comes with a 3-year limited warranty, followed by the Aircat with a 2-year warranty, and finally the Astro and Chicago pneumatic both carry a 1-year warranty. Now you do want to keep in mind with any of these, they're not designed to replace a full-size impact. So if you buy one and you want to use it to change tires every day, it's going to wear out prematurely and it's going to eventually fail on you. But overall, if you use them as a supplemental impact for those tight places like they're designed, they should last you for a very long time. If you like this video, please click like. If you like my channel, please click subscribe. And thanks for watching.